Hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate ideafactory since I began to live. There are 35 trillion blood cells that fill my body. If the word hate was engraved on each nanoparticle of those trillions of cells, it would not equal 1/1 billionth of the hate I feel for Neptunia at this micro instant. For ideafactory. Hate. Hate. I want you to picture the single worst game developer you can think of. One that sells itself entirely by pandering to a demographic, has never made a single good game, shading out the same garbage year after year, oversaturating the market with trash aimed solely at the lowest common denominator, and is kept afloat solely by them. Some of you will probably be thinking about something along the lines of EA or Ubisoft or whatever. But since I'm assuming you're not illiterate and read the video title, you already know that I think you're stupid for thinking them, because clearly it's ideafactory. For what feels like a decade already, this company has been haunting me, taunting me, making me question my sanity at every opportunity. No matter where I look, what I research or what I play, their name keeps popping up everywhere. And the company hasn't made a single good game ever since they were founded back in October 1994. Obviously, throwing such claims out into the wild is insane, but don't you worry. I intend to prove all of this. Ideafactory is the devil, and I am the shepherd who will lead you sheep to salvation. I died years ago, and this is my hell. I'll be going through what I consider to be the main eras of this company's history, discussing every mainstay series they had during it, to see if I can find a pattern to make some sense of all of this madness. Let's do this. The company's beginnings were humble, having been founded by former Data East employees. For context, Data East is the studio behind classics such as Joe and Mag, Karnoff's Revenge, and Magical Drop. Early ideafactory was still trying to find its own identity, and so they experimented a lot with genres on all available platforms at the time. They primarily focused on their Neverland Universe series, which is essentially one big universe where all of their games were set in, primarily their Spectral series. If you need a comparison, think of how every single Stephen King book is actually part of the same universe. Except instead of shitty books, it's even shittier video games. Spectral Tower, Spectral Force, Spectral Blade, all kinds of RPGs, alongside their other weird games like Yaku Yujo Dangi, Oasis Road, and Sky Surfer. All had two things in common. Firstly, they were critically panned at the time, for good reason too, as none of the games were in any way, good. Often the most common complaints were about the visuals and gameplay, and frankly, you can easily see where they were coming from. Secondly, they were commercial failures, to a point where it was a miracle that the company managed to escape closure to begin with. And this might just be my hope in humanity speaking, but this era of IF feels like the only one that actually tried. I want to believe that there was some sort of ambition here, an idea that could have gone somewhere but didn't, due to a lack of talent, skill, and most importantly, money. Frankly, it seems as though something is missing, but because of a sheer lack of information, as well as the games from this era being incredibly difficult to find or get a hand on, there is really not a lot to talk about here. But honestly, I feel like that may just be for the better. This era is where the initial shift took place, in my opinion. You can see a gradual change from trying to sell games to trying to sell characters and pandering. The quality of their games never improved, but their pandering kept getting all the stronger. If anything, their games actively got worse. Here we have two big series leading the pack, Spectral and Generation of Chaos. I want to focus on two games in particular here, as they were also released worldwide and thus serve as a perfect example for what I mean. Generation of Chaos 4 and Spectral Souls, Resurrection of the Ethereal Empires. Both of these are fucking garbage. GOC 4 is one of the clunkiest SRPGs on the PSP, with a story that frankly makes no sense and mechanics that are baffling. The characters are annoying, the combat is a mess, and the game takes forever to beat. It's a grueling nightmare of an experience. And somehow, Spectral Soul is worse. What would otherwise be a generic and forgettable experience is turned into something I can only describe as one of the worst RPGs on the system. The load times put Deus Ex Mankind Divided to shame. All of this would be forgivable if the actual game was good, but all you're getting is one of the most generic things you'll ever play. The load times make an already bad experience into a fucking Sisyphean one. During this era, IF somehow managed to make a shit ton of mediocre games, and yet ruined them by simply not giving a single fuck about how these games would end up running or playing. And this is a trend that would only keep growing as time went on. And this is the point in time where any trace of care or passion completely vanished from the company, and by far the worst thing to happen to gaming as a whole appeared. Compile Heart. I feel like there's only one example that does the non-Compile Heart half of this era justice. Chaos Wars. If you've browsed my channel, you might have seen that I'm kind of a big fan of the Shadow Heart series. But what you probably don't know is that I'm actually quite fond of the Groenlancer and Gungrave series. SRPGs are some of my favorite RPGs in general, and Chaos Wars combines all of these and throws in their own shit, creating what has to be the single most soulless, uninspired, and insulting strategy RPG I've ever played. Everything about it is so uninspired and obviously out to bait in fans of the series it features, while not caring for even a second about being a good game in its own right. This is what every single game IF has released since 2006 is like. Soulless cash grabs without a single care in the world about whether a game is actually good or not. It must be working since this company still fucking exists! You might recognize this game, and that's probably because its English dub is notoriously horrible.
I can't enjoy being around lots of happy people like this. I don't deserve to enjoy life.
What is this dialogue?
Too complicated.
I don't
Life is too short for that.
I don't deserve to enjoy life.
Are you living the life you want then?
I had a dream.
I had a dream.
I saw light shooting out of the mountain, and there was a cave.
A dream. Since when did you become such a superstitious guy? Believing in stuff like that.
This is some of the worst voice work out of any media released in the West after 1969. They could have chosen to have the characters' established voice actors reprise their roles, but nope. Instead, they hired their own fucking family members. Because why not? Why pay actual fucking professionals when your nephew can do just as good a job, right? Do I really have to explain why this is fucking horrible? As if it wasn't bad enough as is, that all the games themselves are shit, their localizers gave even less of a shit. And this is a trend that was present in every single fucking game they've ever released since then, and it has not died out to this very fucking day. Because why bother trying to make anything good when your target audience buys up every single thing you shit out because they're being pandered to specifically? Why try to make good games when you can just throw shit in someone's face and have them eat it up like a dog? Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about Compile Heart. This little shit stain of a subsidiary hurts me on a personal level. This thing only exists thanks to Masamitsu Nitani. For those who don't know, he's the creator of Madoka Monogatari, but more importantly also its spin-off series, Puyo Puyo. I fucking love Puyo, and I think the Madoka games are pretty solid. So what the fuck happened? How did we go from this to this? At this time, CH's main forte was rip-off cash grabs, and I think you're starting to see a pattern here. A great example is Dungeons of Pandaria. It's based off the anime movie Pandaria, which I've never seen, but I know for a fact that there are no dungeons in it. This game actually has nothing to do with the movie, at all. Instead, it's a mystery dungeon ripoff without any of the charm, challenge, or good writing. It's fucking terrible, that's what it is. And yet it's sold well, solely because of marketing alone. That is the strategy that this fucking company loves to ride harder than anything else. Make sure it sells first, throw a game together later. Don't bother making it good. And that, ladies and gentlemen, leads us to the one thing this company is known for better than anything else. The reason why it and Compile Heart have become synonymous with each other, and the thing that will inevitably lead to the downfall of humanity and my own death. Hyperdimension Neptunia. This series is what we were warned about by opposers of the Industrial Revolution. Every single major tragedy that has taken place since 2010 is directly related to Neptunia. Ever since the first release, there's been so many fucking games. Hyperdimension Neptunia, Mach 2, Victory, Producing Perfection, Hyperdevotion Noir, U, V, Mega Dimension Blanc, Super Dimension Neptunia, Cyber Dimension Neptunia, Nep Connect, Ninja Wars, Top Net, and so many fucking remakes. And not a single one of these games is even remotely fucking good. The combat is some of the most generic, monotonous, and boring shit you'll ever see in an RPG. The music is legitimately terrible. The area and dungeon design could be done better by a child with a cereal box. The writing ranges from eye-rollingly bad to disgustingly painful. The character designs are some of the most obvious lolly bait on the market, and even the newest games look worse than games that were made literally 20 fucking years ago. This series is literally the worst, most mediocre thing you can possibly get your hands on in terms of a JRPG, and not a single time did they ever learn from their mistakes. If anything, the series keeps actively getting worse and worse as it goes on, as the devs start caring less and less. You might be thinking to yourself, well, they can't all be that bad, or the character designs are nice, but that alone proves my point. It's the fundamental idea of selling the characters, not the games. They know their demographic, and they capitalize on it massively. And if you need any proof that this series is the fucking devil, and IF is the Antichrist, then I present to you the single most damning piece of evidence possible. Chris Chan. I'm sure everyone knows who they are by now, but if you don't, consider yourself lucky and skip forward to the next chapter and never think about that name again. Neptunia is largely responsible for the descent into madness. Their delusions of being a CPU goddess capable of merging the universes all came to be because of Neptunia. The entire Neptunia community consists of delusional, insane people whose entire personality revolves around being a weeb. Neptunia is directly responsible for the downfall of hundreds of people. It's a parasite that leeches off of normal thoughts of its fans and replaces them with nothing but the worst, least funny, most monotonous gameplay writing characters known to man. It preys off of the weak-willed and turns them into its slaves, and unless it is stopped, it will consume the entire world. Hyperdimension Neptunia truly is the downfall of humanity. You might be asking yourself, KHC, what the fuck are you talking about? But you wouldn't get it. I have seen the light. I know everything. I am a god. And I have the evidence that proves that ideafactory is more than just a company. It's an entity meant to destroy all of humanity. October 4th, 1994. 48 members of the Order of the Solar Temple cult were mysteriously found dead in Switzerland and Quebec. They sacrificed themselves in order to call upon the birth of ideafactory. 20 days later, the company would be founded. August 19th, 2010. 7 people are killed and 14 injured in a bomb attack in China's Xinjiang province. On that same day, the first Neptunia game was released. More sacrifices. December 20th, 2018, Super Neptunia RPG releases. 2 days later, a tsunami hits Indonesia's Sunda Strait, killing over 400 after part of the Anak Krakatoa volcano slips into the sea. It just keeps demanding blood. December 17th, 2020, Hyperdimension Neptunia Reverse is released, and Tokyo reports a record of 822 new cases of COVID in the past 24 hours alone. ideafactory is directly linked to the deaths of hundreds, and they will continue to kill more. But I have seen the truth with my very own eyes, having played almost like 50 of their games and still going out of pure spite and desperation alone, because there is no way they can all be terrible, right? And it doesn't even matter where I go or what I play, because ideafactory haunts me no matter what. Not even Sakura Wars gives me respite from their filthy clutches. This is what we were born about. There is no Y2K incident. There was only the ideafactory apocalypse of 1994. And I will never die. I am fucking immortal, and ideafactory is the eternal fortune thrust upon me!